You may not know it, but every single day, you're in the middle of a civil war. But not a civil war of a political type. You are in a civil war in your mind. A lot of people want to change their lives, change the way they think, change the way they act, but they can never seem to get there. They can never seem to break through those barriers, and they feel like they're just stuck constantly. And so this makes for a civil war in your mind of who you want to be, who you are trying to be, and versus who you are on a daily basis. Now, there is no easy way to change the way you think, the way you act, the way you react. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of dedication to become a person that you want to be, a person that you can be proud of. I grew up in a very rough environment, very rough household. And so I had a lot of things and attitudes that were programmed into me very deeply from a very young age up through adulthood. And to change those things required a lot of mental energy. Most of the work to change the way you think, the way you act, and the way you react is going to be a mental battle. That's where it's won. If you want to change yourself for the better, most of your battle is going to be all mental. And it's extremely hard to do. It is not an easy thing to accomplish, and it's not a thing that's just going to happen overnight. It's going to take a lot of dedication on your part, a lot of work on your part. We like to think that we go on YouTube and we listen to a couple motivational talks, and we think, well, there, I put in the work. Well, that's not putting in the work. And the problem with getting a lot of advice from YouTube and things is that your mind will trick yourself into think that you're actually putting in the work. Like when you watch videos, whether they're self-help videos or whether they're tutorials, and all you do is watch, but you never apply, what happens is your mind is tricked into thinking that you were doing something, that you were doing the work. And so you feel good about yourself, and you think because you watched a few videos that, oh, you're taking steps in the right direction. Well, you sort of are, but not really, because most of the work is going to be done when you're away from the computer, away from your podcast, or away from all of these things that you're watching, when you're alone and when you're with other people. One of the great exercises that you can do to really start solidifying these things is to write down who you want to be. What type of person do you want to be? What attitudes are you trying to change? What are the things that are going to make you happy? In a nutshell, you want to write down the goal of who you want to be as a human being. And one of the things that we really lose sight of when we start going through the process of self-improvement and trying to better ourselves is that it is not a race. It is a lifelong journey of self-improvement. Nothing will happen overnight for you. There is no arrival destination. It's just a constant building layer on top of layer, and every day making those changes to be the person that you want to be. Like I said, I grew up rough, so I had a lot of characteristics about myself that I couldn't stand. I was very quick-tempered. I had absolute zero self-control. And it took a long time to break free of all of that conditioning, because that's what it is. So if you have bad input in and day out, well, you are going to have bad outputs as well. And all of those things and all those behaviors just come flying through the surface. And one of the other things that I think people miss when doing this self-improvement, let's say you're angry. Well, they think if you're an angry type of person, people will think that, well, I have to change, and so I can no longer be angry. Well, that's not true at all. All of the emotions that you go through in your day-to-day life, those are human emotions, and you are supposed to feel them, and they all serve a purpose. But the goal should be mastery over those emotions and how to redirect those emotions into positive things versus negative things. So it's not that you shouldn't get angry anymore. It's that you shouldn't react to that anger in a negative way. You should be able to harness that anger and use that anger to drive you and motivate you towards crushing your goals. There's a huge difference in that. Because if you think that you are not supposed to feel these emotions anymore because you're on this path of self-improvement, well, you're setting yourself up for a daily failure, because every time that you begin to feel one of these emotions, you are going to be disappointed in yourself thinking that you failed. Well, in fact, you didn't. Those are human emotions. You're supposed to feel those emotions. You just have to learn how to harness those emotions. One of the best ways, at least in my experience, that I was able to start reinventing myself, because that's really what you're doing. You are reinventing yourself. But was to be self-aware. Self-awareness is going to be your greatest asset. You have to learn how to be present. When you're in situations, you have to practice being present. And the more that you can begin to practice being present, the more you will take notice. Like, one of the first things that I noticed when I started actually practicing to be aware when I was in conversations and being present in that conversation, that if somebody said something that upset me, I could physically feel it. You can physically feel the emotions start to overcome you. As they rise up and they bubble up, you can feel them. And if you're present and if you're practicing that, then you can start to take control of that situation. In the beginning, you're going to fail, and you're going to fail a lot. And that's okay. Like I said, it's not a race. It's not a destination. It's a lifelong commitment to change. But as you begin to practice that, being present, and you feel like an anger coming over you, or any other type of emotion, you can start to redirect it. And so I began to be more present, and I would feel those emotions rise up, and I would just stop talking for a minute, because you don't have to respond to every emotion. If somebody pisses you off in a conversation, you don't have to immediately respond to that. And if you're self-aware and you're being present in that, you can take a nice deep breath, slow yourself down, and think of a much better way to respond to whatever it is that they are saying. Then you actually have the choice to decide of what you want to do and how you want to act. The whole idea of self-improvement is exactly that, being self-aware. You have to practice it. Because if you don't realize what you were doing and how you are reacting to the stimulus that is coming into you, you'll never be able to conquer it. One of the things that I noticed right off the bat when I started doing this is a lot of my behaviors before, they were automatic. I wasn't even thinking about them. Somebody would say something, I'd just react or respond, or a situation would arise and I would all suddenly just react and be panicked and be full of anxiety and worst case scenarios. You know how it all goes, because all of these behaviors all go hand in hand. But when I became more present in my own life, and my own thought processes. Then you could start being able to take a hold of those situations and redirect them. If I was worried about something, if I was in the moment, being present in that, I could understand, okay, all right, this just happened, but this is not the end of the world. This is not the end of my day. This is not the end of the week, the end of the month, whatever. And then you could start to formulate plans so that you can actually take charge of the situation and use that situation as a growth stepping stone and not a hindrance to your life. Wanting to change your life in itself, right? Just the act of wanting to improve yourself is a huge step forward. And you should give yourself a lot of credit for even wanting to take that step. Because most people are not even aware of how bad their behaviors are currently. So if you have the self-knowledge that you want to change and you want to become a better person, you're already miles ahead. And there's a lot of that fake it till you make it stuff. Well, it's really not faking it until you make it, because anything that you do, whether you think you are faking it, it's real because you are really doing it. But what you are doing is forming habits. And it takes a long time and a lot of practice to start forming these habits. But pretty soon, if you practice being stoic long enough in the face of stressful situations, pretty soon that becomes who you are. You take on that personality. You become that person. And one of the greatest things about being a human being is that at any given time of the day, at any given moment, you can reinvent yourself. Who else can do that? There's no other species on this planet that can just decide that today I want to reinvent myself. I want to reinvent who I am, what I stand for, what I believe. I mean, holy shit, that's powerful. And you can do that anytime that you feel like it. And if you reinvent yourself and maybe you don't like it, it doesn't suit you, you can reinvent yourself again. There's no fucking limits on how many times you get to reinvent yourself and become a different person and be a different person than you were yesterday. That is an awesome, awesome thing to think about. That you don't have to be the person you were yesterday. You don't even have to be the person you were 5 fucking minutes ago if you don't want. At any given moment, you can change. And the number one way that you can do that is by being present in your own goddamn life. Show up for yourself. Take careful attention about your thoughts, especially some of the best times to practice being self-aware and to be present is when you're having conversations with people or when you're going through an experience. Try not to live your life on autopilot. Learn to be present in your own life. That's the only way that you can begin to change the behaviors that you do not like. And to me, that brings me to another subject. When I decided that I wanted to change my life, I did it by negation, which I think is probably one of the easiest ways to go about becoming the person that you want to be, is through negation. Let me explain what I mean by negation. So a lot of people, when they want to change things, they think about, oh, I want to be this and I want to be that and I want to be this and I want to be that. I found it, from my own experience, a lot easier just to examine the things that I don't want to be, examine the behaviors that I did not want. It was easier for me to identify the things that I didn't want to be. And so by identifying those things that you don't want to be, once you get rid of those things, you automatically become the person that you want to be. So I did it through negation. I'm sure you can do it the other way as well. Just focus on the things that you want to be and try to be those. But negation, to me, is a more simplified way of going about it, because it's easier to identify all of the negative. Because as human beings, we're so drawn to the negative shit all the time. So it was easier to be like, all right, I don't want that behavior. I don't like that behavior anymore. I'm going to change this. I'm going to change that. But the biggest step in this entire process, and the hardest step in this entire process, is just to be present. Show up for yourself on a daily basis. It's hard in the beginning. It's extremely hard. I'm not going to tell you it's not. It's very hard to be present. But the more you begin to practice it, and I say practice it because it's just like working out, anything else, whether you're going to the gym or you're practicing mixed martial arts or anything like that, it's a skill you have to practice. So being self-aware and being present in your life is something that you actively have to do. It doesn't just happen, because the human brain would rather operate on autopilot once it's already been programmed. And that brings me to the next subject, is that once you begin to practice this self-awareness and you're able to start changing these things, you're actually reprogramming your mind, reprogramming your body, reprogramming all of your responses. And it gets easier and easier as the time goes on. And you start to automatically do the things that you want to do. And you automatically become the person that you want to be. But like I said, it's a daily thing. It's for the rest of your life. There's always something that we want to change, or always something that we want to become. We're always trying to learn. We're always trying to achieve something else. So there is no destination. It's a daily process. And learn to love the process and celebrate all of those wins that you have. It is a civil war. It's a battle for your mind. But you have to be present in the battle in order for you to be able to win it. You cannot be a bystander of your own life. That will never work. You have to be actively participating in your own life, actively participating in watching your thoughts and what you're thinking about, watching how you respond to people and to situations. There's an old quote that said, life is 10% of what happens to us and 90% of how we react to it. And that is God's honest truth right there. I don't think I've ever heard it put better than that. Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. Our responses the way we react can change situations, can change relationships, can change our neighborhoods, our cities, our states, and eventually, if enough people practice it, the world. So learn to be actively present in your life. It's a hard skill to develop, but it's one worth pursuing. You will thank yourself later on down the road, I guarantee it. And so, as you go about your day, practice being present in your own life. Show up to your life. Don't be a bystander. All right, everybody, this is Grim with Get the Rant, and I will talk to you again in the next episode.